The crystal chandeliers of the Metropolitan Grand Ballroom cast dancing shadows across the polished marble floor as New York's elite gathered for the annual Children's Hope Foundation Gala. Victoria Sterling adjusted the delicate strap of her midnight blue evening gown and took a steadying breath. At 28, she had built a reputation as one of the city's most promising young architects. But tonight, she felt like an imposter among the billionaires and socialites. "You look stunning," Elena Rodriguez whispered, squeezing Victoria's arm reassuringly. Her best friend since college had insisted on accompanying her to this intimidating event. "Remember, you belong here just as much as anyone else," Victoria managed a grateful smile, though her stomach churned with nervous energy. The invitation had come through her firm's senior partner, a chance to network with potential clients who could fund her dream project of sustainable housing for low-income families. She had spent weeks preparing her presentation, knowing this could be the opportunity that changed everything. The ballroom buzzed with conversations about stock markets, charity donations, and exotic vacations. Victoria moved through the crowd, her architect's eye automatically noting the building's impressive Art Deco details. She was admiring the intricate ceiling molding when a familiar laugh made her blood freeze. That deep, warm sound transported her instantly back to college lecture halls and late-night study sessions. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she slowly turned toward the sound. Praying she was wrong, James Whitmore stood near the silent auction tables, looking every inch. The powerful CEO, the newspapers described, his dark hair was shorter now, perfectly styled, and his broad shoulders filled out a custom-tailored tuxedo that probably cost more than Victoria's monthly rent. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath completely. Those same intense gray eyes that had once looked at her like she was his entire world. He was surrounded by a small group of admirers, including a stunning blonde woman whose diamond necklace caught the light like captured stars. Victoria recognized her immediately from gossip magazines. Cassandra Blackwell, heiress to a shipping fortune, and according to recent headlines, James's fiancée. "Victoria, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." Lena's concerned voice seemed to come from very far away. Before Victoria could respond, those gray eyes found hers across the crowded room. Time seemed to stop. The chattering voices faded to white noise. The elaborate flower arrangements and designer gowns blurred into background. For one suspended moment, it was just the two of them. 20-year-old college students again, discovering love for the first time. James's conversation faltered mid-sentence. Victoria watched his face cycle through surprise, recognition, and something that looked almost like pain before his expression hardened into the polite mask of a seasoned businessman. "I have to get out of here," Victoria whispered urgently to Elena, but it was too late. James was already excusing himself from his group, moving toward her with purposeful strides. "Victoria Sterling." Her name sounded different in his deeper, more mature voice. "I wasn't expecting to see you here."
"God, James."
She somehow managed to keep her voice steady, though her hands trembled slightly. "Congratulations on your engagement. And your success, of course." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Thank you. I heard you started your own firm. It's architecture, wasn't it? You always did have grand plans for changing the world." The subtle barb in his tone stung, but Victoria lifted her chin. "Some of us still believe in using our talents for something meaningful." Lena cleared her throat pointedly, and Victoria realized she'd been unconsciously holding her breath. "James, this is my friend Elena Rodriguez, Elena James Whitmore." James extended his hand with practiced charm, but Victoria noticed how his eyes kept drifting back to her. "A pleasure. Any friend of Victoria's is welcome." "Oh, I'm surprised. She never mentioned knowing me. She talks about you all the time," Lena said with a mischievous smile that made Victoria want to disappear into the marble floor. "You were quite the topic of conversation during our wine nights." Victoria shot her friend a warning look, but James raised an eyebrow with what might have been amusement. "Is that so? I hope the reviews weren't too harsh." Before Victoria could formulate a response, the stunning blonde appeared at James's side, linking her arm possessively through his. "Darling, everyone's asking about the seating arrangements for the dinner." Cassandra's smile was perfect and cold as winter frost. "You've been gone so long, of course, Cassandra. I'd like you to meet Victoria Sterling, an old friend from college." Victoria, my fiancée, Cassandra Blackwell. Victoria shook the offered hand, noting how Cassandra's grip was firmer than necessary. Congratulations, you make a beautiful couple. Thank you. James has told me so much about his college days, though I don't recall your name coming up. Cassandra's tone was honey-sweet, with an undertone of steel. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Alina stepped forward smoothly. We were just admiring the architecture of this building. Victoria's been explaining the historical significance of the design elements. How fascinating, Cassandra said, in a tone that suggested it was anything but. James, darling, we really should return to our table. The silent auction is closing soon, and you wanted to bid on that art piece. In a moment, James's voice carried an edge of authority that made Cassandra's perfect smile flicker slightly. Victoria, I'd be interested to hear about your current projects. Perhaps we could grab coffee sometime this week. The simple suggestion felt loaded. With dangerous possibility, Victoria was acutely aware of Cassandra's increasingly frigid expression and Elena's poorly concealed excitement. I don't think that would be appropriate, Victoria said carefully. You're clearly very busy with your engagement and business commitments. Something flickered in James's eyes. Disappointment, relief? Of course, though if you ever need any. Connections in the development world, don't hesitate to reach out. I remember how passionate you were about sustainable design. The fact that he remembered sent an unwelcome warmth through Victoria's chest. That's very kind of you, James. Cassandra's voice had taken on a sharper edge. The auction. Right. James straightened, the businessman mask sliding back into place. It was good seeing you, Victoria. Lena, lovely meeting you. As they walked away, Victoria couldn't help but notice how James's shoulders seemed to carry an invisible weight. She remembered when he used to laugh freely, when his eyes sparkled with dreams of using his family's wealth to make a difference. Now, he looked like a man going through the motions of a life that didn't quite fit. Well, that was intense, Alina murmured. Want to tell me why you never mentioned that your college boyfriend is now one of the richest men in America? Victoria watched James's retreating figure, noting how Cassandra leaned possessively into his side. Because it doesn't matter. That was a long time ago. That's why you're gripping your clutch like it's a life preserver and you've gone. Completely pale. Before Victoria could deny it, her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced down and her heart skipped. We need to talk. Meet me on the terrace in 10 minutes. Please. Alina peered over her shoulder and whistled low. Well, this just got interesting. Victoria stared at the message, her mind racing. Seeing James again had reopened wounds she thought had healed years ago. The way he'd looked at her, the careful distance in his voice, the weight of everything. They'd never said to each other, meeting him would be playing with fire. But as she watched him across the ballroom, surrounded by wealth and admiration, yet somehow seeming utterly alone, she knew she couldn't walk away. But yet, I'm going to regret this, she whispered. Probably, Alina agreed cheerfully, but think of the story you'll have to tell. Victoria made her way through the crowd toward the terrace doors, her heart pounding with each step. Behind her, she was vaguely aware of Alina creating a distraction by loudly asking a waiter about the catering. But her focus was entirely on what lay ahead. The terrace was blessedly empty, offering a stunning view of the city lights below. Victoria stepped into the cool night air, wrapping her arms around herself as she waited. The sounds of the party seemed muted out here, replaced by the distant hum of traffic and the whisper of wind through the high-rise buildings. She didn't have to wait long. James appeared in the doorway, silhouetted against the warm light from the ballroom. He'd removed his bow tie, and the top button of his shirt was undone, making him look more like the young man she'd once known. Thank you for coming, he said quietly, moving to stand beside her at the railing. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't. Victoria kept her eyes on the city below, afraid of what she might see if she looked at him directly. Want, James? The question hung in the air between them, weighted with 8 years of silence and unanswered questions. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I want to apologize. Victoria's breath caught in her throat. An apology was the last thing she'd expected from James Whitmore. The man who had walked away from their relationship without a backward glance 8 years ago? Apologize for what, exactly? Right. Finally turning to face him. The city lights reflected in his gray eyes, making them appear almost luminescent in the darkness. James ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, messing it in a way that reminded her painfully of their college days. For how things ended between us, for the things I said, for the things I didn't say. You made your choice perfectly clear, Victoria replied, her voice steadier than she felt. Your family's expectations mattered more than what we had. I understood that then, and I understand it now. No, you don't understand. James stepped closer, and Victoria caught the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with something uniquely him. You don't know what really happened? Before Victoria could respond, both their phones buzzed simultaneously with emergency alerts. James pulled out his device, frowning at the screen. That's strange. There's some kind of disturbance downtown. Multiple agencies responding. Victoria checked her own phone, seeing news alerts flooding her feed about unexplained lights in the sky and evacuations in lower Manhattan. This looks serious. Maybe we should go back inside. Wait. James caught her arm gently. Victoria, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you years ago. James, whatever it is can wait. People might be in danger. That's exactly why I need to tell you now. His grip tightened slightly, and Victoria saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Fear. The night I broke up with you, I was contacted by someone from the government. They knew things about my family's business, about projects my father was involved in, projects that had nothing to do with real estate or technology. Victoria stared at him, confusion and growing alarm warring in her chest. What are you talking about? Before James could answer, the terrace doors burst open. A man in a dark suit stepped out, his eyes scanning the area before settling on James. Mr. Whitmore, we need to go now. Who is this? Victoria demanded, instinctively stepping back. Dr. Nathaniel Cross, James said grimly. Victoria, meet the man who's been controlling my life for the past 8 years. Dr. Cross was tall and lean, with prematurely gray hair and eyes that seemed to see everything. He looked like an academic, but there was something in his bearing that suggested military training. Miss Sterling, I apologize for the interruption, but circumstances have accelerated beyond our control. I don't understand what's happening, Victoria said, looking between the two men. The lights downtown aren't a publicity stunt or an equipment malfunction, Dr. Cross explained, his voice urgent but calm. We're dealing with a first contact situation, and unfortunately it appears to be hostile. Victoria laughed, a sharp sound of disbelief. First contact? You mean aliens? This is insane. I wish it were, James said quietly. Victoria, my family's wealth didn't come from traditional business ventures. For 3 generations, we've been contractors for a classified government program. We've been preparing for this day for decades. The distant sound of helicopters grew louder, and Victoria could see unusual aircraft moving across the night sky, their lights too bright and moving in patterns that defied normal aviation. This isn't real. This can't be real, Miss Sterling, Dr. Cross said, pulling out what looked like a modified tablet. I'm going to show you something that will be difficult to accept, but I need you to stay calm. The device projected a holographic display that made Victoria's knees weak. It showed what appeared to be massive ships hovering over major cities worldwide. The crafts were unlike anything she'd ever seen, their surfaces seeming to shift and flow like liquid metal. They arrived 6 hours ago, Dr. Cross continued. So far, they haven't made any aggressive moves. But our analysts believe that's about to change. Mr. Whitmore's resources, and your specific skills make both of you valuable assets in our response. My skills? Victoria's voice cracked. An architect. I design buildings. You're an architect who specializes in adaptive and sustainable design, James said, moving closer to her. Victoria, these beings aren't just technologically advanced. Their entire civilization is based on living architecture. Buildings that grow and adapt, cities that respond to environmental changes. How could you possibly know that? Dr. Cross answered, Because this isn't their first visit. We've been in limited contact for over 50 years. Small exchanges of information, mostly. They've been studying us, and we've been preparing. Victoria felt the world tilting around her. Everything she thought she knew about reality was crumbling. Why are you telling me this? Why now? Because something's gone wrong, James said, his voice heavy with regret. The faction we've been communicating with was apparently not representative of their whole species. A more aggressive group has taken control, and they're not interested in peaceful coexistence. The sound of something large moving through the air above them made all three look up. A craft unlike anything Victoria had ever imagined was descending toward the building, its surface rippling with patterns of light that seemed almost organic. "We need to move," Dr. Cross said, already heading toward the terrace doors. A secure facility upstate. "Mr. Whitmore, bring Miss Sterling. We'll need both of you." "I'm not going anywhere," Victoria said, backing away from both men. "This is crazy. You're both crazy." The craft settled onto the building's rooftop with impossible grace, and a section of its hull began to open like a flower blooming. Victoria watched in stunned silence as a figure emerged from within. The being was humanoid, but clearly not human. Tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to shimmer between blue and silver. Its features were elegant and alien, with large eyes that held an intelligence both ancient and utterly foreign. "Greetings," the being said, its voice somehow reaching them despite the distance. The words seemed to bypass Victoria's ears entirely, appearing directly in her mind. "I am Zara Voss, diplomatic envoy of the Confederation. I seek the one called James Whitmore." James stepped forward, his face pale but determined. "I'm here. Your species faces a choice," Zara continued, descending from the craft with movements that seemed to defy gravity. "Integration or elimination. The warships you see above your cities await your decision." Dr. Cross had his hand on what Victoria now realized was a weapon. "Zara, we had agreements, protocols. The protocols were established by the peaceful faction." Zara replied, now close enough that Victoria could see the intricate patterns that moved across her skin like living tattoos. "They have been ... overruled. The new leadership believes your species is too primitive and destructive to be allowed continued existence." "There has to be another way," James said, stepping between Dr. Cross and the alien diplomat. "What would it take to change their minds?" Zara's large eyes fixed on him with something that might have been sympathy. "Proof that your species can evolve beyond its current limitations. Proof of wisdom, unity, and the ability to create rather than merely consume." Victoria found her voice, though it sounded strange in her own ears. "What kind of proof?" The alien's attention shifted to her, and Victoria felt as though she was being examined on a cellular level. "You are the builder. The one who dreams of structures that live in harmony with their environment. How do you know about my work?" "We have been watching many of your kind, seeking those who might bridge the gap between our species." Zara moved closer, her presence somehow both calming and overwhelming. "Your people have the potential for greatness. But first you must prove you can overcome the divisions that fragment your world." "What are you proposing?" Dr. Cross asked, his weapon still ready but no longer aimed directly at Zara. "A collaboration, a project that demonstrates human potential for growth and unity." Zara gestured toward the cityscape below them. "Within 72 of your hours, construct something that proves your species worthy of preservation. Something that shows you can work together across your artificial boundaries and create beauty rather than destruction." Victoria felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. 72 hours to save the entire human race. "The Council of Worlds requires tangible proof. If you cannot demonstrate worthiness within this time frame, the elimination protocols will be enacted." "And if we succeed?" James asked. "Then your species will be welcomed into the Confederation as junior partners. You will be given knowledge and technology that will transform your world into something magnificent." Dr. Cross lowered his weapon completely. "What exactly are you asking us to build?" Zara's skin patterns shifted to what might have been anticipation. "A living city. A structure that breathes, adapts, and grows." Something that proves your species can move beyond the destructive patterns of your past. Her gaze focused on Victoria again. This cannot be accomplished by technology alone. Requires the vision of one who understands that buildings should be partners with their environment, not conquerors of it. Victoria's mind raced through the implications. Everything she'd worked toward, everything she'd dreamed of building, suddenly had the weight of human survival resting on it. This is impossible. Even with unlimited resources, what you're describing would take months, maybe years. Not if you combine human creativity with Confederation biotechnology, Zara replied. But it requires perfect cooperation between your species and ours. Any betrayal, any attempt at violence, will result in immediate termination of the project in your species. Why trust us at all? Victoria asked. If you think we're so primitive and destructive, for the first time, something like emotion crossed the aliens' features. Because there are those among us who believe in the potential we see in individuals like yourself and James Whitmore, your capacity for love, for sacrifice, for growth. These qualities suggest that your species might yet become something worthy of the stars. The weight of that statement settled over them all. Victoria looked at James, seeing her own overwhelming fear and desperate hope reflected in his eyes. 8 years ago, they had lost each other to smaller, more human concerns. Now, the fate of their entire species might depend on their ability to work together. If we do this, Victoria said slowly, if we attempt this impossible thing, what guarantee do we have that the aggressive faction won't simply destroy us anyway? None, Zara admitted. But the alternative is certain destruction. This is your only chance. Dr. Cross stepped forward. Where would this construction take place? And what kind of time frame are we really looking at? There is a location your government has prepared, though they did not know its ultimate purpose. A facility in Nevada where human and Confederation technology can be safely integrated. Zara's patterns shifted again. As for the time frame, construction must begin within 6 hours. Completion must occur before the third sunrise from now. Victoria felt the impossibility of it all crushing down on her. But as she looked at the alien ships hovering over the city, at the fear and hope warring in James's eyes, at Dr. Cross's grim determination, she realized that impossible was all they had left. I'll need a team, she said, her voice stronger than she felt. The best engineers, architects, and environmental specialists available. And I'll need complete creative control. Done, Dr. Cross said immediately. And I'll need the truth, Victoria continued, looking directly at James. All of it. Everything you've kept from me for 8 years. James met her gaze steadily. You'll have it. All of it. Zara observed this exchange with what might have been approval. Then we have an accord, a transport to the Nevada facility. We'll arrive within the hour. I will accompany you to serve as liaison and technical advisor. As if summoned by her words, more aircraft began descending from the night sky. These were clearly human military vehicles, but they moved with the smooth efficiency of a well-rehearsed operation. Victoria, James said quietly as Dr. Cross began coordinating with the incoming forces. I know you have no reason to trust me, but I need you to know that everything I did 8 years ago I did to protect you from this. I thought if I pushed you away, you'd be safe from the dangerous world I was part of. Victoria studied his face, seeing the pain and regret etched in every line. You made that choice for both of us without giving me a say in it, I know. And I've regretted it every day since. Before Victoria could respond, General Morrison stepped onto the terrace, his uniform crisp, despite the late hour. Ma'am, sir, we need to move. The situation is deteriorating rapidly in other major cities. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it fast. As they prepared to leave the terrace, Victoria took one last look at the city below. In 72 hours, it might all be gone. It might be the beginning of something unimaginable. Everything depended on their ability to bridge the gap between two species that had never truly understood each other. The weight of that responsibility should have been crushing. Instead, Victoria felt something she hadn't experienced in years. A sense of purpose that went beyond her own dreams and ambitions. As they boarded the military transport, James caught her hand briefly. Whatever happens, I'm glad we have this chance to work together again. Victoria squeezed his hand once before letting go. Let's just hope we're good enough to save the world. The aircraft lifted off into the night, carrying them toward a future that would either mark humanity's greatest triumph or its final chapter. The Nevada facility was unlike anything Victoria had ever imagined. Built into the side of a mountain, it stretched deep underground. Its corridors humming with energy from technology that seemed to blend human engineering with something far more advanced. As their transport descended into the hidden complex, Victoria caught glimpses of laboratories where scientists worked alongside beings that clearly weren't human. How long has this been going on? She asked Dr. Cross as they walked through corridors lined with what appeared to be living metal. The first contact happened in 1952, he replied, his footsteps echoing in the vast space. A small scout ship crashed in the desert. Instead of the cover-up the public believes happened, we actually made contact with the survivors. They were from Zara's faction, the ones who believed in peaceful cooperation. James walked beside Victoria, his presence both comforting and unsettling. Every few steps, he would point out features of the facility that his family's companies had helped construct, revealing a hidden world that had existed parallel to normal human society for decades. The biodome is through here, Zara said, leading them toward massive doors that seemed to breathe as they approached. This is where your demonstration must take place. The space has been prepared with both human tools and Confederation biotechnology. The doors opened to reveal a circular chamber the size of several football fields, its domed ceiling transparent and showing the star-filled desert sky above. But it was the floor that took Victoria's breath away, instead of concrete or metal. The surface appeared to be composed of some kind of living substrate that pulsed gently with internal light. This is where we build a city, Victoria asked, stepping onto the strange surface. It felt warm and slightly yielding under her feet, like walking on living tissue. Not just any city, Zara explained, her skin patterns shifting to what Victoria was beginning to recognize as excitement. A symbiotic habitat, structure that doesn't just house life but participates in it. Your species calls it biomimicry, but we call it partnership. Dr. Cross activated a holographic display that filled the center of the dome. We have 47 hours remaining. Teams of specialists are arriving from around the world, but the core design decisions rest with you, Miss Sterling. Victoria studied the swirling holographic space, her mind racing through possibilities and impossibilities. I need to understand the materials we're working with. Traditional architecture won't apply here. Allow me, Zara said, approaching one of the walls. She placed her hand against a panel. Suddenly the air filled with floating samples of the building materials they would have access to. Some looked like metal, but moved like liquid. Others resembled plants, but were clearly technological. Still others defied any category Victoria could name. These are programmable matter, Zara explained. They respond to design intention as much as physical manipulation. With the right guidance, they can become whatever structure you envision. James moved closer to Victoria, studying the floating samples with the intensity she remembered from their college days when he would help her with complex engineering problems. What about power systems, climate control, the basic infrastructure? Those concepts are obsolete, Zara replied. A truly living building generates its own energy from sunlight, thermal differences, even the movement of its inhabitants, regulates its own temperature and air quality through biological processes. Victoria reached out to touch one of the floating samples, and it responded immediately to her presence, shifting color and texture. This is incredible, but how do I design something I don't understand? You don't design it, Zara said gently. You collaborate with it. The materials want to become something beautiful and functional. Your role is to provide the vision and intention that guides their growth. Before Victoria could ask more questions, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Dr. Cross immediately activated his communication device. Morrison, report. General Morrison's voice crackled through the speakers. Sir, we have a situation. The ships over Beijing have begun some kind of scanning operation. Energy readings are off the charts, and we're getting reports of similar activity over Moscow and London. Zara's skin pattern shifted to deep crimson, a color Victoria instinctively knew meant danger. The war faction grows impatient. They are evaluating your major population centers for termination efficiency. The weight of those words hit Victoria like a physical blow, low billions of people going about their daily lives. Unaware that their continued existence hung in the balance of her ability to design something that had never existed before. How much time do we actually have? James asked, his voice tight with controlled panic. Zara closed her eyes, and her skin pattern swirled in complex configurations. Victoria realized she was communicating with her ship, or perhaps other members of her species. When she opened her eyes again, her expression was grave. 36 hours. The war faction has accelerated their timeline. If we cannot demonstrate meaningful progress by then, they will begin the elimination protocols with the largest population centers. 36 hours, Victoria repeated numbly. To build something that's never been built before, using technology. I don't understand. To save everyone I've ever known. Victoria? James's voice was steady, anchoring her in the moment. Remember what you told me in college? That the impossible just takes a little longer to figure out? She looked at him, seeing past the successful businessman to the young man, who had believed in her dreams when she barely believed in them herself. That was about designing sustainable housing, not saving the human race. The principle is the same, he said, moving closer. You've always been able to see what others couldn't. You've always been able to imagine buildings that work with nature instead of against it. This is just a bigger canvas. Dr. Cross cleared his throat. The specialist teams are arriving. We have the world's leading experts in biomimetics, environmental, engineering, and adaptive architecture. They're all waiting for your direction. Victoria looked around the vast dome at the living floor beneath her feet, at the impossible materials floating in the air around her, at the alien who had become humanity's unlikely ally. The scope of what they were attempting should have been paralyzing. Instead, she felt something familiar stirring in her chest. The same feeling she'd had as a child building elaborate structures from blocks, or as a student sketching her first sustainable housing designs. I need to understand the parameters, she said, her voice growing stronger. What exactly are we building? It's housing for how many people? What functions does it need to serve? Zara gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show a small, city-sized structure, a demonstration habitat for approximately 10,000 inhabitants. It must show capacity for growth, adaptation to environmental changes, and integration with natural systems. Most importantly, it must demonstrate that your species can create something that enhances rather than depletes its environment. 1,000 people, Victoria murmured, her mind already beginning to work through the challenges. We'll need residential areas, commercial spaces, agricultural systems, waste processing, energy generation, all of which must be fully integrated, Zara added. Not separate systems cobbled together, but a single living organism that serves all these functions. James stepped up beside Victoria. What about governance, social structures? City isn't just buildings, it's people living together. That too must be demonstrated, Zara confirmed. The war faction believes your species is incapable of true cooperation. The habitat must show otherwise. Victoria closed her eyes and tried to visualize what they were describing. A living city that grew like a plant, adapted like an animal, and housed thousands of humans in harmony with its environment. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that traditional architectural thinking wouldn't work at all. I need to see examples, she said suddenly. Zara, your people's cities. Can you show me how they work? Zara's pattern shifted, to what might have been pleasure, of course. But remember, our biology is different from yours.
Yeah.
Our cities work for us because they are grown from our genetic templates. Yours must be different, adapted to human needs and human nature. The holographic display filled with images that made Victoria gasp. Cities that looked like coral reefs, reaching toward the sky in spiraling towers that pulsed with life. Buildings that breathed and grew, their walls rippling with patterns of light and shadow. Structures that seemed to dance with the wind and rain, celebrating weather instead of hiding from it. They're beautiful, Victoria whispered. And functional, Zara added. Structure houses millions of beings in perfect comfort while giving back more to the environment than it takes. Crime, poverty, and environmental destruction are concepts our cities make impossible. How? Because the cities themselves are conscious. They feel the pain of their inhabitants and automatically adapt to alleviate it. They sense environmental damage and heal it instantly. They respond to the needs of every individual, while maintaining the health of the whole. Victoria stared at the impossible images, her architect's mind racing to understand the principles at work. The buildings are alive. It's more than alive, Zara corrected. They are wise. They have learned over millions of years how to create perfect harmony between individual need and collective good. But humans aren't telepathic like your people, James pointed out. Through biometric feedback, emotional resonance, and behavioral analysis, Zara explained. The materials we will use are capable of sensing stress, contentment, health, and need through proximity alone. A truly responsive habitat would anticipate problems before they occur and adjust accordingly. Dr. Cross activated his communication device again. Teams are assembled and waiting for briefing. We also have video feeds from major cities worldwide. People are starting to notice the ships and ask questions. Victoria knew she was at a crossroads. Every moment of hesitation brought humanity closer to extinction. But the magnitude of what they were attempting still seemed impossible. James, she said quietly, 8 years ago, when you walked away from us, from me, you said it was because you had responsibilities I couldn't understand. Was this what you meant? He nodded, pain evident in his eyes. My father told me about the program when I turned 20, said it was our family's duty to be ready for this day. I was supposed to marry someone from another family in the program, have children who would carry on the work. I was supposed to forget about normal human concerns like love. And you believed that was right? Believed it was necessary. James reached out tentatively, touching her hand. I thought keeping you out of it was protecting you. I was wrong about a lot of things. Victoria studied his face, seeing the young man she'd loved overlaid with the weight of secrets he'd carried for years. You made that choice for both of us, I know, and I'd give anything to take it back. Before Victoria could respond, alarms sounded again, more urgent this time. Dr. Cross's face went pale as he listened to his communication device. The ships over Tokyo have begun some kind of energy discharge, he reported. It's not an attack, but it's affecting electronics throughout the city. Whatever they're doing, it's accelerating. Zara's skin patterns turned deep violet, a color that somehow conveyed urgency beyond words. They are preparing the elimination array. Once it reaches full charge, it cannot be stopped. How long? Victoria asked. 24 hours. Perhaps. Less the number hit Victoria like a physical blow. 24 hours to design, build, and populate a living city that would prove humanity worthy of survival? It's not enough time, she said, the words coming out smaller than she intended. Then we make it enough, James replied firmly. Victoria, you're the most brilliant architect I've ever known. If anyone can do this, it's you. Not alone, she said, looking around at the impossible space, at the floating materials that defied every law of physics she understood. I can't do this alone. You won't be alone, Zara said, stepping closer. I will guide the biotechnology. Integration. Dr. Cross and his teams will handle the technical infrastructure. James can coordinate resources and logistics. And the 10,000 people who are supposed to live in this demonstration habitat, where exactly are we going to find? 10,000 volunteers, willing to test an experimental alien city? Dr. Cross cleared his throat. Actually, we have that covered. Military personnel, scientists, and their families from the program. People who understand what's at stake and have been preparing for this possibility. Victoria felt the weight of all those lives, all those hopes, settling on her shoulders. But alongside the fear, she felt something else growing. The same excitement she'd felt as a student when a particularly challenging design problem clicked into place. All right, she said, her voice growing steadier. Let's save the world. James smiled, and for a moment she saw the boy she'd fallen in love with all those years ago, together. Victoria looked around at the living dome, the impossible materials waiting to be shaped by her vision, at the alien ally who represented humanity's only hope, at the man whose choices had once broken her heart, but who now offered her the chance to heal it. Together she agreed as the teams assembled and the countdown to humanity's judgment continued. Victoria Sterling began to design the most important building in human history. A living city that would either mark the beginning of a new age for humanity or serve as its final monument. But as she worked, one thought kept returning. Sometimes the impossible just takes a little longer to figure out.